We often say the decisions made in America impact the entire world, and they do. The President of the United States steers the ship as far as foreign policy is concerned, but it's the U.S. Congress who sets the course. Brian Mast is chairman of the United States House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs. He has served in the U.S. Congress for 8 years, and prior to that, served in the U.S. Armed Forces. He was given a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. I sat down with the chairman and talked about what the U.S. role is and what it should be in Gaza, in Iran, in Syria, in Russia and Ukraine, and around the entire globe. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us.
Glad to. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about some of the troubled parts of the world. And I wanted to sit with you in particular because not only are you chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, but you're a recipient of a Bronze Star of the Purple Heart. You understand, maybe better than anybody, the reality of conflict. And so when we look at troubled parts of the world, you have a perspective some people may not have. So let's start talking about Gaza.
I understand the graphic parts of war that a lot of times they don't like to show on TV.
Yeah, the reality. It's, let's talk about Gaza because there's a reality there. Hamas made the choice in October of 23. The response has been overwhelming. Depending on who you talk to, and when I talk to different people in different parts of the globe, it seems often I only hear one side of the story. What's the right thing here? The U.S. is trying to play a role along with Egypt and Qatar. What's the correct answer? How do we get out of that quagmire?
I think there's a couple of things. One, understand or tell others to understand that war is the remedy that the people of Gaza chose. That was their choice. That was the remedy that they picked. Number two, realize that in the one-sided, what we see across the media where it's so one-sided, that is by design. And it's a design that's been going on for years with pseudo government institutions being a part of that design. And to kind of draw that circle a little bit, the way that it's historically taken place, you would have Hamas as the leadership of Gaza, and they would feed disinformation, lies to the Gaza-run health ministry, which was, of course, a part of Hamas. And then whatever the Gaza-run health ministry would say, it would be parroted by arms of the United Nations, like UNRWA and others, and then that would be parroted by a lot in the mainstream media. And then you get things, and to be very specific about this, like the large marches that you had in Turkey, where they called it the International Day of Rage. Why? Because Israel bombed the Al Aliyah hospital in Gaza, and there was 500 people dead. But no, that wasn't what happened. It was actually a Palestinian Islamic Jihad misfired rocket that didn't even hit the hospital. It hit the parking lot, and they made the whole thing up, but they created rage across the globe. And that's the circle that goes on for the one-sided media, and everybody allows themselves to be sucked into it over and over and over again. And to get to your question about, what is what is the solution in part? I think the solution in part is to say, again, war was the remedy that was chosen, and you have to give war a chance here. Why? Because every time that Israel's told, hey, you can't go past 30 days of doing this, you can't go past Ramadan, you can't go into Rafah, don't you do anything with Lebanon, don't you? Every single time they were told, don't do this, guess what? They did it. The world kept going, and you know what? It was actually really positive for the bulk of the world to counter terrorism.
When we talk about the Palestinian people, and you said they've chosen this, obviously Hamas chose this, are there innocent bystanders in this process as we go through it?
Unquestionably. But when I say the Palestinian people chose, they chose literally by election at one point Hamas as their leadership. But it's not just Hamas. I've mentioned Palestinian Islamic Jihad already. There's Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, there's Lion's Den, there's Fatah, there's every leadership group there has the same mantra of not allowing a Jewish state, not allowing existence of the state of Israel, and wanting jihad against those people or anybody that's affiliated with them, whether they're Israeli or American or otherwise. Wholly supportive of the hostage taking that's taken place, again, whether American, Israeli, or somebody else. Certainly a part of the mechanism, even if they weren't wearing green hoods or black hoods and green bandanas, were a part of the mechanism of building the massive network of tunnels under schools, under hospitals, under apartment buildings, transporting the materials to make rockets, to make explosives, transporting the trucks around that were firing these rockets in different places, holding hostages, people literally that were working for UNRWA employees that were a part of holding these hostages or participating on October 7th. They were an integral part of the entire network that allowed all of this to happen.
You said an interesting phrase in there, give war a chance.
Yes.
And when we think in terms of that, how important ultimately is a ceasefire, and how much time and effort should the United States be putting into trying to achieve that?
I think it's important, but it's not important to have a premature peace. It's counterproductive to have a premature peace. And I'm not saying that we're not at that time that we should be seeking this peace. We should be seeking a peace. There's been a destruction across the region of terrorist networks, but what you still have to have is a willing partner on the other side to say, terrorism will not be our path. What has existed before, the calling for a destruction of Israel, that will not take place, whatsoever anymore. The aim to kill anybody simply for the fact that they are Jewish, regardless of where they come from, that will come to an end. You don't have a laydown of these ideologies, and you certainly don't have a laydown of the weapon systems that they use to fulfill their ideology of kill as many Jews as possible.
Let's talk about Iran. The Trump administration is trying to come to some sort of an agreement, although that seems to change a little bit each week on exactly what we're looking for there. But President Obama had an agreement with Iran. You were not a big fan of that agreement. Tell me why.
Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was terrible on a number of fronts. Now we're obviously a number of years down the line to where we would be at the end of this, allowing Iran to, again, be at the threshold of nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs that puts the whole world in danger, and certainly the Middle East and those in closer proximity into a greater danger. It was a bad deal at the time, and it should have been much stronger. Now there's a lot of talk constantly. I think there was just recently an Axios report that came out that I had phone calls about. Hey, we hear the president is going to allow this level of enrichment of uranium. Well, where did you hear that? Well, I read an Axios article. Well, guess what? Axios, I think, has since issued some sort of retraction or something about the fact that it wasn't based in truth, and it turns out, as we could have expected, everybody's putting this, conjuring up these ideas that are not based on anything that Steve Witkoff has told them, or Secretary Rubio has told them, or President Trump has told them. They're coming to these conclusions, and they're not factual.
President Trump has an interesting approach to diplomacy sometimes. He has started his conversation with Iran by saying, well, maybe we'll have to bomb you if diplomacy doesn't work. That was the very first sentence out of his mouth, or very first sentence in his letter, was perhaps there will have to be a military answer here if diplomacy doesn't work. Is that an effective diplomatic tool when you're dealing with Iran?
I don't think the president looks, I know for the fact, doesn't look in terms of, is this the way that, the hammer works, the tool? He's speaking, as he always does, as a normal person. These are my thoughts. Listen, if diplomacy doesn't work, saying number one, I want diplomacy to work. That's what you're saying when you say that. Diplomacy is the number one goal. We don't want to jump to kinetic action. We want to jump to diplomatic action. But if that doesn't work, guess what? It has to be kinetic action, because you're this country that, through your government, is trying to destroy our ally Israel, is, wreaking havoc across the region by conducting kill operations anywhere you can. Kill operations out of Yemen, kill operations out of Lebanon and Syria and Gaza, and anywhere that you can do it, you will conduct kill operations. So you know what? We're not going to give you a nuclear weapon in any way, shape, or form. We don't want you to have the capabilities to have what would be called a dirty bomb, where you could spread radiological material around by the means of conventional explosives. We don't want you to have any weapon system, because we know that you will use them to kill people. But If we can take care of that diplomatically, then we'll take care of that diplomatically. But let me say one other thing about Iran real quick. They are in the weakest possible position right now. Inflation through the roof. Their allies are gone. Bashar al-Assad is gone. Their forces have been, of Hezbollah and others have been decimated. There's a commitment against the Houthis in Yemen that didn't exist under the Biden administration. They are decimated. We don't want to allow them to regroup, but the president absolutely recognized the situation and the opportunity that we have here.
The supreme leader in Iran, I remember when the agreement was reached with the Obama administration, literally the day they signed that, led a crowd chanting, "Death to America, death to America." Many times since then, he has said things that are not complimentary of the United States. Donald Trump has said things that are not complimentary of Iran. Is it realistic? Can diplomacy work with those two men in charge of their countries?
It can. Sometimes they say night is darkest before the light. I don't know that that's the moment that we're in, but you do have an opportunity. Given what I said already, the weakness that's taking place in Iran. Now, they're used to being in these weak situations, but that inflation is a very big deal there. I think they're very much concerned about regime change in the country of Iran because of the lack of goods, the inflation that's taking place there, their destruction of forces across the globe. I think the leadership there is concerned about regime change, and they have a very strong counterparty that exists around the globe to support an alternative to the regime in Iran, to support a democratic future for the people of Iran. It's very strong across the globe. And in that, we don't know that what we get to, but we know the president is willing to work to it to say, listen, if you want to move to being a good partner, like what Syria is at least making an effort to do right now, there's an opportunity to speak. If that is not something that you're looking to work towards, then there's not the opportunity to have sanctions removed like Syria, to have other things removed like Syria. Not that they're the perfect example, but they're a pretty good example of somebody at least making that effort.
You mentioned the possibility of a kinetic response, of kinetic action. If diplomacy doesn't work, is the United States justified in taking military action to make sure there is not a nuclear Iran?
Yeah, let me say this, yes, affirmatively, number one, that's my opinion. But to use some of the words of the Ayatollah, he said yesterday, I believe, in response about the negotiations, what business does the United States of America have, deciding, what weapons we buy and what our future is this? And to answer his question directly, which he posed as rhetorical, the business we have is that, again, through all of your arms, you are out there killing people. You are out there destroying nations through all of your arms, through all of your funding on purpose, and specifically American interests as well. That's what business we have in doing it, and we will take care of business if we need to.
Let's shift to Syria. The president met with the interim president of Syria recently while he was on his trip to the Middle East region. One of the things he talked about was lifting sanctions there and trying to give this interim government an opportunity to lift up the people that have been under so much strain for so long. Can we trust a president who used to be a member of al-Qaeda?
Yeah, I think the answer is not as far as you can throw them. But, I think Secretary Rubio said it very well. Anybody that you picked out of there was not going to pass a police lineup. I think those were his exact words. They're not. Everybody was a part of a warring party that had ties to ISIS, that had ties to al-Qaeda. But what you do apparently have out of this leader is somebody with the commitment to say, I want a better future for my country, and that to me is more important than a Muslim political state and all that that would entail. And he said no less in a number of different ways, working to, probably things that push him closer to his own potential assassination in things that he said to bring himself closer to the West. So I think in that situation, while we can't trust everything and we are trying to verify this, outwardly, he's saying the right things and making moves that point towards trying to do the right thing for the future of his people.
Let's shift gears to Russia and Ukraine. Our president, President Trump, has had what he thought was a reasonably good communication relationship with Vladimir Putin. But recently he spent 2 hours on the phone with Putin, hung up the phone, and Putin immediately went out and attacked civilian areas in Ukraine. How thin is his patience running, and what, if any, is the proper response for the United States if Russia simply doesn't want to go to the table and talk peace?
I won't speak for the president and his patience for this. I wasn't on the phone conversation, and so I wouldn't do that for him. But what you have right now is you still have a resilient Ukrainian people that demonstrated a hell of an attack deep inside Russia, 1,000+ miles inside of Russia, doing something that any military of any size would be proud of in terms of an operation, basically destroying 40% or more of their strategic air corps that was capable of delivering munitions. And that was a part of conducting attacks against Ukraine. And they literally destroyed it in a very inexpensive way with a drone attack in a way that would have made Mossad proud. And so they have a demonstration to fight, a demonstration for creativity. They are defending within their own borders, which makes them infinitely stronger than the invading Russian forces. They're doing things like posting and sending letters to the families of the deceased inside of Russia to say, hey, we're happy to let you come, visit your captured individual. We're happy to, send the remains to do these different things. Your country isn't telling you that this is the person that was sent to the battlefield and killed. These are all things that are taking place that show the difference diametrically between Russia and Ukraine and how this is being prosecuted. Those are all things that are important. The other thing that I would say is, as much as war is ramping up, I think war is ramping up in part because everybody's posturing for how they negotiate. How do you say, well, how do they negotiate and how are they getting more to that point? We are seeing prisoner exchanges, as we speak right now. Last week, the prisoner exchanges between each side was up to 500-600 individuals, and it was expected to ramp up by the weekend to close to 1,000 at that point. So there are conversations that are taking place between the two sides, and again, I just think it's, in large part the sides posturing to make sure that they're in their strongest perceived position for all of the talks that are going on.
Let's bring the last question back toward home, and that is the border. Particularly the southern border has been a challenge during the Biden administration in particular. That has changed dramatically. Literally since day one of this Trump administration, that has changed dramatically. Why does that matter?
It's a ghost town now, right? It's you literally can watch live feeds of concrete pads that a year and a half ago were overflowing with people looking to illegally cross our border, that now you might see one individual on that pad with a broom, pushing a broom and just cleaning the pad off. Why? Because signals matter, and signals across South Central America are, you're not going to walk, come by bike, motorcycle, train, or anything else to our southern border and be granted access in any way other than proper invitation into the United States of America. And if you do, you're going to be returned to your country of origin. That signal matters, that demonstration that will take place matters, and that matters across the globe because every world leader and their intelligence agencies assess about President Trump that what he says he will do, he will do. So if you want to try that, you are rolling the dice.
Final question, and that is, in the United States, and what goes on in Washington literally impacts the entire world. What should the U.S. role be on the global stage? There's always a great debate as to whether we're too involved or we're not involved enough. What should the U.S. role be all around the globe?
We're sitting in a room right now where daily I might have 5 to 10 foreign delegations or prime ministers or trade ministers or foreign ministers or whatever they might be. And we're constantly having the conversation about what is the U.S. role. And what I think it comes down to for the U.S. role is that there's nobody else that can do it. There's nobody else with the commitment to freedom. There's nobody else with the military might or the will to fight like Americans have a will to fight and to go out there and defend what we believe in. The other countries across the globe just don't have the capability, and so they do look to us to be the leader to either send a signal or deliver on the signal that we send. And I think that's our role, and that's what the president is trying to do, is be clear. Be clear in what's taking place right now. We didn't get into trade and tariffs and things like that, but there's something important taking place that's peripheral to this as well. Don't take the United States of America for granted if you were doing that. Don't try to take advantage of us if you're one of our allies through the ways that you've been doing so in trade. And you could say the way Europe was taking us for granted, that we would just do everything, funding NATO, while they not put as much money into it. That's taking us for granted. And if you're one of our adversaries or enemies, do not take us lightly, because we have the capability in a way that nobody else does. And I think that's our role, is recognizing what it is that we bring to bear, using that strong position that we have to hopefully keep us out of conflict. But sometimes you have to, still demonstrate that you're the king of the hill.
Peace through strength.
Peace through strength.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.